Hello and welcome vinyl community, and hello to all those that are returning viewers, and hello to anyone that's new to this. So today's video, the Style Council in defence of. The Style Council, incredibly divisive band, I think, amongst the Weller fan base. The comments on some of my other videos were split to those who hated the Style Council. Quite a few that are totally ambivalent towards them, but they did have some staunch defenders who love them. For me, as I say, I came to the Style Council very late, really. My journey started with Paul Weller with his first solo album. I went through the Jam catalogue and he did the Style Council last. Almost out of interest, could they be as bad as people thought? And the answer is no. So what the Style Council were for their first couple of years were a fabulous singles band. Some of the B-sides are brilliant, but they're not on the albums. And unlike, say, the Smiths, they never really compiled their B-sides into kind of compilations in their lifetime. And so conversely, you've got the 4 studio albums, a 5th album that was unreleased, and then a big box set, really, that gathers up all the other stuff. So yeah, so the Style Council, a strange band of their time. I think they're rooted in the 80s because I think of the particularly the later albums, the sound, but the earlier albums, it's the politics of the day that kind of dominate the lyrics and the sleeve notes. And the clever bit is you wouldn't know they're a political band from the music, but when you kind of read the lyrics and you understand the history of the times, they you know, were out there. But very much UK kind of politics. Bands like U2 were on the biggest stage, weren't they? They were looking at the big picture of American politics and Nicaragua and stuff like that. The Smiths were tackling vegetarianism and Meat is Murder and the monarchy, Queen is Dead. And Morrissey's very much on the inner politics, his sexuality and stuff like that. But the Style Council were looking at things like YTS schemes, homelessness, having to move to get a job. So they're very much of their time, and that does date them a little bit. Some fabulous music, but erratic is probably the word. So in defence of the Style Council, I'm going to start with the debut album called Cafe Blue. And it's, in its own way, sums up everything that's good about the Style Council, but also highlights some of the weaknesses. So up until this point, they had released 5 singles with various songs on the B-sides, and none of them were on the album. One of the B-sides is on there. There's an alternative version of Head Start, so it My Ever Changing Moods, which was a single, but the version on here is totally different. 13 tracks, although the sleeve says 12, and of the 13 tracks, 5 were instrumentals and 2 were sung by people other than Paul Weller. One of which is a rap song called A Gospel, which is just pretty horrendous. But the rest of the album is just interesting. The references here would be things like jazz, northern soul, Parisian kind of instrumentals. It's a bonkers album, incredibly brave. How he went from the Jam to this is kind of mind-boggling. But the more I listen to this album, the more I like it. It's a lovely album to put on and kind of do other things to. It's certainly not a classic. It's far too erratic for that. There's some duffers on here, but there's also enough on it to kind of justify its existence. So Exhibit A, very interesting album, but not a great album. However, Exhibit B, I think, is a much stronger case for the defence. This is our favourite shop. This is their second album, and I think probably their best album. Lovely sleeve, so it's basically as blessed as their favourite shop, all the things. So it's a nice one to sift through and look at all the things that are in that shop. But this one is so of its time. It's not as eccentric as the first album, but it's still a little bit bonkers. The politics on this one are kind of in your face. So Tony Benn's quoted in there, YTS training scheme, helplines, adverts for CND. The songs tackle things like creation of new towns, as in Come to Milton Keynes, and you've got Lenny Henry on it, Lenny Henry of Dudley, doing an improv of a racist northern comedian on there as well, which should it be on the album? No, but it's there. The stuff they left off, a bit like the first album, you know, could have made it a better album, but at least it's got Walls Come Tumbling Down on at the end, which I think personally is their best single, and that's on here. So great track called Man of Great Promise. And again, some not all of it sung by Paul Weller. The opening track has a Mick Talbot vocal, but it's a really good song. DC Lee's on here, and it's a kind of a kitchen sink album, but it's a good one, and I think it is their best album. And after this, they really went even more political. So the whole Red Wedge thing got very much involved in party politics, and the 1987 election didn't go the way that I think they were hoping for, and they kind of got very disillusioned, I think, with the politic kind of angle at that point. I think they felt they'd been used a little bit. I know some of the stuff I've read in that box set that Paul Weller felt they needed to back off from the politics. So unfortunately, some of the stuff that made them the most interesting, they kind of lost. And they made a much more consistent album next in 1987 with The Cost of Loving. But it's a little bit dull. The sleeve is kind of just all orange. So it's in a homage to the White Album by the Beatles. I think they were thinking of hoping it could be a double album, but the record company went no. So the initial copies is there's 9 tracks, although it says there's only 8, and it's pressed as 2 lots of 12-inch singles, so it's at 45 RPM. So don't make the mistake I made when he played it and played at 33, because it's even worse then. The only thing I can say about this album, it's his biggest weakness, it's a tad dull. It's of its time. It's 80s R&B. I think New Jack Swing and all that was in. And this, it's okay. It plods along. There's a real misstep with the second song, which is another rap song, and it kind of kills the album really. Ironically, the track that's not listed is the last song, called A Woman's Tale. It's probably the best thing on it. It's very generic, which is something I wouldn't have said about the Style Council prior to that. And that one didn't do very well. I think the band was starting to flounder. They did do one more studio album in their lifetime, which is their 4th and final album called Confessions of a Pop Group. They kind of went for broke with this one. And this is the old game of 2 halves. The first side is all pretty much orchestral and piano based, and it's called, subtitled The Piano Paintings. And there's a couple of late career highlights on here. The opening track is A Very Deep Sea, is a lovely song, but the third track, Changing of the Guard, is an absolutely great song, and that's probably one of their best tracks. But the rest of the side one's interesting, very orchestral, totally different to anything Paul Weller's done before or since. If only they'd have carried on like that on the second side, you might have had a bit of a lost classic album, this. But unfortunately, the second side is back to the R&B kind of stuff, and when I listen to it, it is definitely the weakest side of a Paul Weller and Style Council and a Jam album, actually. And I couldn't really come up with anything other than okay for 1 or 2 tracks. Most of it I've put not very good. Particularly the singles were poor off this. So yeah, Confessions I've got a bit of a quiet end, but the first side I would urge people to check out, but the rest of the album doesn't live up to that opening side. As I say, the strength of the Style Council's in their singles, really, particularly their early years, and some of the B-sides are fab, and they're not anywhere to be found on the albums. There's one called Ghosts of Daku, which is on the B-side of Shout to the Top, and that's a lovely, lovely song, but all about, obviously, the Holocaust, but really good song. Party Chambers, It Just Came to Pieces in My Hand, Head Start of Happiness. There's some great singles and B-sides of the Style Council which weren't on the albums. If there's one exhibit I would like to present to exonerate the Style Council, give this one a go. This is called the Style Council Collection. This is a CD done by Dennis Mundy, who compiled that box set. They did one like this for the Jam, which rounded up some stuff that wasn't on Snap. But this really does a good job of taking the singles in order. It goes chronologically, but it focuses on the first couple of years, and then it cherry picks the best of the end and gets rid of some of the missteps. So if you can spot that one, it's well worth picking up. The big box out of print now, very expensive. That also contains the 5th and final unreleased in its lifetime Style Council called Decade of New Modernism, which was so bad that nobody would release it. I've listened to it a couple of times. It's not for me. It's Paul Weller Goes to Ibiza, Handbag House, Acid House. It just is. It's almost a listen to once just to go, whoa. But it's not one for me. It did get a belated vinyl issue a few years back. I didn't bother buying it. Kind of wish I had now, because it goes for an absolute fortune. But it's certainly not something I'd highlight spending lots of money on. Box set's very good, but I actually think as a one-stop shop for the Style Council, that's the one to get. So yeah, I'm hoping I've put up a bit of a defence. I wasn't a fan at the time, but I did check them out belatedly, and I think there's some good stuff dotted around their catalogue. They're not on a par with the Jam, and his solo stuff I think went in a totally different direction, and how he resurrected his career, I'm not quite sure, but fair play to Mr. Weller. So thank you for watching. Let me know your thoughts on the Style Council in the comments below. It'd be particularly good to hear from some fans who maybe went to some of the gigs and things and could tell us about that. And obviously Jam fans, you are welcome. You know, if you want to give them a go and tell me what you think, then great. But I suspect I know the answer. But yeah, thank you for watching. I'll see you on the next video, and have a good day.